lied and used fake documents to obtain the interview with my mother, made lurid and false claims about the royal family, which played on her fears and fueled paranoia.
Royal banquets are supposed to represent unity, elegance, and tradition, but this time the spotlight turned into a storm. When Queen Camilla arrived in one of Catherine's most prized gowns, the gesture struck like a lightning bolt through the palace walls. Prince William saw it as more than just a breach of etiquette. It was a painful insult to his wife and her status in the monarchy. Witnesses claim his rage was impossible to conceal. So why would Camilla make such a daring decision? What consequences might this have? A banquet intended to promote unity. The grand banquet at Buckingham Palace represented perfection, an awe-inspiring display of monarchy tradition and power. Golden chandeliers, gleaming marble floors, sparkling silver cutlery, crystal glasses, and fragrant rose garlands transformed the vast hall into a regal masterpiece, reminding the world of Britain's eternal grandeur and royal authority. The guests, too, understood the script they were supposed to follow. Foreign dignitaries, their titles weighty and their alliances carefully measured, strolled gracefully in gowns and suits made of the finest silks. Diamonds sparkled at the ears and wrists. Tiaras gleamed beneath carefully arranged hair, and conversation flowed at a low, respectful tone. Nothing was intended to disturb the delicate balance of elegance and reverence. In one corner, the orchestra played softly, creating a soundtrack that seemed to float beneath the chandeliers like a hidden spell, connecting every gesture and glance to a larger performance. Because that's exactly what the banquet was. Performance. It was not just dinner, it was high-quality theater. Every napkin fold, floral arrangement, and musical note had been practiced, perfected, and polished to bear the weight of the crown's authority. To the untrained eye, this was harmony in motion, a kingdom that remained strong and serene, a monarchy unaffected by scandal or change. Cracks were forming beneath the glittering facade. Nobody could see them in the gleam of the marble, but they were there, etched deeply into the relationships of those who sat at the head of the table. For weeks, the family had been caught up in a frenzy of public speculation. Newspapers and tabloids had feasted on whispers of discord, rumors of bitter arguments behind closed doors, accusations of betrayal pitting one relative against another, and bizarre stories too tempting for the press to pass up. Every headline eroded the palace's image of unity, which it had worked so hard to project. Tonight's banquet was meant to be the grand rebuttal to it all, a living declaration that the monarchy was unwavering, unflappable, and untouchable. The staging was perfect. The guest list was carefully curated. The cameras were positioned to capture the majesty without revealing the tension. The world only needed to see glittering glass, polite laughter, and the reassuring illusion that nothing within these ancient walls ever faltered. But illusions are fragile. They sparkle beautifully, but they can shatter with the slightest crack. And on this particular night, that crack manifested itself in an unexpected manner, not in a poorly delivered speech, not in an ill-timed gesture, but in fabric, a gown. It was supposed to be just another dress in a room filled with couture, but in royal life, clothes are never just that. They function as symbols, statements, and, in some cases, weapons. This gown carries echoes of another woman, another story, another claim. And as the cameras flashed and the guests turned their heads, what should have been the monarchy's defining moment became the spark that threatened to derail everything. The chandeliers still sparkled. The orchestra was still playing. The roses continued to fill the air with sweetness. But beneath the performance, something had changed. At that point, the monarchy's carefully staged display of strength began to appear less like theater and more like a mask about to slip. What happened during the banquet? Was it that serious? Could it have a serious consequence? Let us find out. The moment the room froze, the grand hall fell silent as King Charles entered, his calm demeanor marred by years of service. Behind him, Queen Camilla strode with regal poise, her silver gown glinting under the chandeliers. Admiration reverberated through the audience. She looked every inch the commanding, radiant queen. However, admiration is a fragile thing. It only lasted a few seconds before starting to wither. Initially, Several eyes widened. Then came the sharp inhale, the subtle but noticeable shift in the air. A murmur drifted from one corner to another, like fire moving from wick to wick. Fans were lifted to their faces, hands covering their mouths, and whispers passed between rows of startled guests. They saw more than just a gown. It was a memory come to life, a symbol too sacred to be worn by anyone else. The gown did not belong to Queen Camilla. Everyone in the room knew. It was Catherine's. Years before, the Princess of Wales had made a splash in the same gown. She had worn it to a state banquet, establishing her as the monarchy's bright future. The moment was immortalized in photographs, splashed across newspapers and magazines, and etched in the minds of millions. Catherine in that gown had become a symbol of grace, elegance, and hope. A living symbol of the royal family's commitment to renewing itself for the next generation. To see anyone else in it, particularly Camilla, was shocking. The orchestra nearly unconsciously faltered. The violin's notes wavered in the air, as if they were out of breath. Across the long tables, dignitaries exchanged nervous glances, their smiles stiffening. Conversations break up mid-sentence. Even the servants, who were trained to remain unseen and unshaken, were unable to hide their emotions. Their eyes darted sideways, revealing their disbelief. The air became thick with tension. Admiration had turned into outrage, but no one dared to express it aloud. What had started out as a grand entrance had turned into a real-time scandal. The moment reached its peak. Catherine entered. She appeared radiant, poised, and graceful as usual. Her smile was carefully measured, and her steps flowed with ease. Those who looked closely, those close enough to notice the subtle flicker in her eyes, saw what lay beneath the polished exterior. Behind the serene smile, a storm was brewing. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but quiet and piercing. The kind of storm that could shake even the most resilient hearts. Her eyes revealed the truth, which her lips refused to express. Betrayal. The room appeared to hold its breath. Suddenly, admiration, disbelief, and unspoken judgment clashed in the silence. Every eye shifted between the two women, the queen, who wore the gown, and the princess, to whom it truly belonged. The scene had transitioned from pageantry to drama, from celebration to confrontation without words. What should have been a night of unity and spectacle had instead become a spectacle in its own right. One that would reverberate well beyond the banquet hall's gilded walls. Who was the first to notice the anomaly? How did he respond? Does the reaction have any weight? Let's look into the reaction to Camilla's elegant appearance. William's silent eruption. Prince William noticed it before anyone else. Camilla entered the grand hall and his eyes narrowed. His gaze clung to her gown, and recognition struck him like lightning in the night sky. It wasn't simply a dress, it was the dress. He was familiar with every fold, every shimmer of silk, and every intricately woven embroidery stitch. The sight drew him back to memory, as if someone had ripped open a door to the past. The gown belonged to his wife, his Catherine gown. A sharp wave of disbelief washed over him, followed by something darker. His jaw tightened. His chest felt like it was bound in iron, and his fists clenched so tightly under the tablecloth that his knuckles turned bone white. Soft murmurs rose around him like smoke in the air, but William could barely hear them. This didn't seem like a mistake or a coincidence to him. It was an act, a deliberate and carefully planned move. His thoughts narrowed to one point. How dare she? The words slipped from his lips in a whisper. Only those closest could hear them. His tone, however, was cold and steel-edged. He was not speaking as a son-in-law or a guest at a royal banquet. He was speaking as a man whose honor and wife's dignity had recently been trampled. Those nearby began to notice a shift in him. His posture was no longer relaxed, but rigid and tense, like a bowstring pulled too tight. His face remained calm, but his eyes burned with a storm that refused to be contained. A woman seated 2 seats away leaned toward her companion and muttered. He appeared to be about to explode. Another, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and fascination, said, "Look at his hands. They're shaking." Catherine also noticed. She knew her husband better than anyone else, and she recognized the storm raging beneath his calm exterior. She leaned closer and gently touched his arm under the table. Her fingers, light and steady, attempted to ground him before he did something he might regret. Her voice was soft, like a breath, but full of calm authority. She whispered, "Don't make a scene. Not here. Not now." William made a slight turn toward her. His jaw remained set, but her touch kept him grounded. For a brief moment, the rage that threatened to burst forth from him was held back by her presence. She was always his balance, the calm in the midst of a storm, the hand that reminded him of his responsibilities when emotion drove him to the brink. However, the fire inside grew even hotter. His rage was not limited to the insult to Catherine. No, this cuts far deeper. That gown was more than just a piece of fabric or a fashion choice. It was a memory, a symbol, and a link with his mother, Diana. Camilla entering the room wearing it was more than just bad taste. It felt like a direct wound to his family, a reminder of the pain he thought he had buried long ago. Every shimmer on the gown was more than just a reminder of Catherine. It was a specter of his mother, a cruel reminder of the woman he had lost and the complicated past that still haunted him. For William, it was more than just disrespect, it was betrayal. And beneath the glittering chandeliers of the royal banquet, his fury raged, silent but powerful enough to shake the air around him. Why did William react so strongly? Could it have triggered a traumatic experience from his past? Let's delve into the specifics of his emotions at the moment. Ghosts of Diana. When William's gaze fell on Camilla dressed in Catherine's gown, it was as if the air had been sucked out of the grand banquet hall. It wasn't simply a fashion choice. It was a knife twisting in wounds he had spent years pushing shut. Catherine was responsible for the gown's fabric, cut, and undeniable elegance. It was hers, a symbol of her grace and quiet dignity as she carried the crown. And now, seeing it on the woman who had long been linked to his mother's deepest suffering, ripped open the wounds of his past. The ghosts of memory surged back with merciless force. He was no longer in the glittering hall, but rather a boy watching his mother, Diana, the beloved people's princess, crumble under the weight of betrayal. He remembered her tears, the private ones that no cameras captured, the kind that shook a child's world and made him vow never to let history repeat itself. He remembered the headlines, the humiliation that was paraded before the entire world, and the shadow that always hung over it all. Camilla. The pain of her absence pressed against his chest, as sharp as it had been the night he lost her. Decades might have passed, but the emptiness she left behind never faded. Every milestone, achievement, and joy he shared with Catherine was tinged with the regret that Diana had not been present to witness them. The woman whose presence had symbolized so much of Diana's anguish dared to wear Catherine's dress. It wasn't just bad taste, it was an insult. To William, it felt like history was clawing its way back from the grave, ready to torment him once more. First his mother, and now his wife. Another woman he loved was drawn into a cruel game of comparison and intrusion. Another reminder that the past was not forgotten, waiting for the right time to strike. William's chest rose and fell violently, as if every breath were a battle. His fists tightened by his side. Around him, the music grew louder. Violins, laughter, and the clinking of crystal glasses couldn't drown out the raging storm inside his mind. He could almost see his mother's face, her radiant smile, the pain that had haunted his childhood, and the silent plea she had once left him with. Do not let them win. Leaning slightly toward Catherine, his voice low but thick with rage, he muttered words intended only for her. This is deliberate. She knows exactly what she is doing. Each syllable resounded with the weight of old grief and new rage. At that point, the banquet hall no longer felt like a celebration. To William, it was a battlefield, and Camilla's gown was more than just fabric. It was a weapon. The ghosts of the past had returned, dressed in silk and jewels, daring him to face the pain he had worked so hard to conceal. And deep down, William knew. The storm within him had only just begun. Did he eventually challenge Camilla for wearing his wife's outfit? Or did he simply swallow his rage and act as if it were nothing? Let's get into the specifics of William's reaction. Shut the corridor confrontation. Later that night, after the palace had quieted down, William found himself unable to sit still. Every nerve in his body seemed to be alive and restless. He pushed his chair back and muttered an excuse, but no one asked where he was going. The truth was that he did not know himself. All he knew was that he needed to escape, away from the banquet, from the whispers, and from the sight that had been bothering him since the evening began. His polished shoes landed on Buckingham's marble corridors, each echo bouncing off the high ceilings like a reminder of the storm inside him. He needed air. He needed space. He was in need of an escape. However, it appeared that escape would be difficult. Camilla appeared behind him, taking softer but steady steps, as if she had been waiting. William couldn't tell if it was a coincidence or by design. All he knew was that she had followed him. They soon found themselves standing in one of the palace's dimly lit hallways. The walls here were adorned with portraits of kings, queens, and long-dead royals, their gilded frames gleaming faintly in the dim light. It was as if the crown's ancestors were watching the upcoming confrontation. William turned sharply, his face filled with rage. His voice, while controlled, was sharp enough to break through the silence. You knew it was Catherine's dress. Camilla met his gaze, her expression calm and detached, as if she had grown accustomed to storms like this. "It's only a gown, William. Don't be overly dramatic." The words only fueled the fire. His composure faltered, and anger seeped through the cracks in his royal restraint. "Nothing in this family is just anything," he exclaimed. That gown was hers, not made from fabric. It conveyed her memory, moment, and dignity. You wore it anyway, in front of everyone. Her lips formed the faintest trace of a smile, but her eyes narrowed with irritation. Her voice was calm, but her words were venomous. "You give ghosts too much power. Maybe it's time to stop living in Diana's shadow." "She's left, William. You cannot let the dead rule over the living." The sentence struck him like a thunderclap. For a heartbeat, he couldn't breathe. His chest tightened, fury and grief colliding, each feeding the other until he felt nearly broken. Nothing could take away the rawness of those words, no matter how much training, duty, or royal poise he had. When he finally spoke, his voice was low and heavy, containing a truth he could no longer conceal. "You'll never understand. You caused her pain, and tonight, you did more than just insult her memory. You also disrespected my wife in front of the entire world." Camilla's carefully held mask slipped for just a moment. Something flickered. Hurt? Guilt? Perhaps fear? But she quickly returned the veil of calm to her face. However, William did not wait for the situation to be resolved. He turned on his heel and strode away, his shadow stretching far beneath the watchful portraits. Camilla stood alone beneath the silent gaze of centuries of monarchs, their painted eyes witnessing the clash between past wounds and current power. How was William's relationship with Camilla prior to that night? Was it strained or cordial? Let's take a look at how the two arrived at the royal banquet. William and Camilla have a complicated relationship. The relationship between Prince William, Prince of Wales, and Queen Camilla is one of the most intriguing and complex dynamics in the royal family today. This year has brought them closer together than ever before, owing to the health struggles of King Charles III and Catherine, Princess of Wales, both of whom are fighting cancer. With so much responsibility suddenly thrust upon William's shoulders, he has had to rely more on Camilla in certain aspects of royal life. Professionally, they are forced to present a united front in support of the king and to ensure that the monarchy continues to function properly. Personally, their bond is still fragile, with decades of history weighing heavily on each interaction. Camilla represents a particularly painful chapter in William's past. Her role in the long and messy love triangle involving King Charles, Princess Diana, and herself left scars that never fully healed. While the affair dominated headlines at the time, it is often overlooked how much it influenced William and his brother Harry's childhood. They grew up witnessing their beloved mother's public humiliation and emotional turmoil, while their father's relationship with Camilla took place in the shadows. For two young boys who adored Diana, it was an early and unforgettable lesson in heartbreak. A palace insider revealed that William and Harry never completely trusted Camilla. Their devotion to Diana was so strong that they couldn't truly accept her, and their relationship remained distant. Even after she became queen consort, the brothers saw her as a reminder of their mother's pain rather than a stepmother. When they discovered Camilla's alleged press connections, their distrust grew even stronger. Harry accused her of leaking stories to improve her image, and William quietly expressed similar concerns. For two men who are fiercely protective of their privacy, it felt like betrayal. However, duty forces William and Camilla to appear together. They smile for the cameras, but behind closed doors, the tension remains. To the outside world, she appears to be accepted, but for William, she is both his father's wife and a symbol of Diana's suffering. That delicate balance was shattered during the banquet scandal. Camilla appeared in one of Catherine's most iconic gowns, causing outrage. The headlines screamed about William's fury and the breakdown of royal unity. The photos revealed the truth: clenched jaws, cold stares, and smiles stretched too thinly. Inside Kensington, William's rage boiled over. "First my mother and now my wife. How much longer must we bear this?" he roared. Catherine, ever calm, reminded him that dignity will always echo louder than anger. But the gown was more than just fabric. It reopened old wounds, connecting Catherine's humiliation with Diana's. For William, protecting his wife is more than just love. It is a promise not to let history repeat itself. The banquet, intended to demonstrate unity, instead revealed fracture. Eventually, the speeches and toasts faded from memory. What remained was the gown, a single garment that spoke louder than words. And the whisper of discord would linger in the palace corridors long after the lights went out and the guests left. A gown wielded more power than words, and its echo would haunt the monarchy for years to come. So, what do you think of Camilla's banquet outfit? Could she truly want to torment William? We would love to hear your thoughts in the comments section below. Do not forget to like and subscribe.